If Cormac McCarthy's novels were tarot cards, what would they be? And for all my logic McCarthy bros out there who are saying, tarot isn't real. Yes, you are so smart, but you weren't smart enough to figure out that witchy women are much more fun than basic pick-me girls. So as me and the other devilish McCarthy troops are having tantric rituals with witches this summer, have fun going to the Barbie movie and hanging out at H&M. At an objective level, however, tarot is a very strong tool to start to learn and understand archetypes. And most people in the world have no idea that they can develop and change their own character. But to be able to do that, you have to understand the basic archetypal structures within us. And the four Western divinatory arts, tarot, Kabbalah, astrology, and numerology, were used for hundreds, if not thousands of years for some of the tools as a way to open archetypal consciousness during Christian tyrannical censorship. And I don't use those tools for divinatory purposes, but I'm here to say to you guys that they have a massive amount of wealth in the personal development space for most people. So let's start off with our first book. And I am randomly selecting McCarthy novels. And the first novel we'll be covering today is The Orchard Keeper. And I just finished 10 hours of recording on The Orchard Keeper. And the card that came to mind immediately is the Wheel of Fortune, which is a massive card to break down. And so if you see in the middle right here, in the circular aspect, we see Terra or Tarot. And in ancient languages, when we're examining them, vowels are interchangeable. And what that means is that, I'm sure as you know, if you know multiple languages, vowels have different sounds in different languages. So when it comes to vowels, for instance, that may say tarot, but we could also pronounce it terra. And in the Latin language, among other languages, the word for earth was terra. And terra is comes from the goddess tradition. And so that is the root of the word tarot. Also, several Romance languages use terra, T-E-R-R-A, as their word for earth. However, if we keep looking at this, if we start at a different word, if we start at the R, rota means wheel, obviously rotation. The Latin word for wheel is rota. And if we continue examining this, we can look at arit right here. Arit right here means to grow in Latin. And the Orchard Keeper is about growth and change. And that's what the Wheel of Fortune really symbolizes. And when you examine the Orchard Keeper, it's about changing fortunes. It features three main characters, John Wesley Ratner, Marion Silder, and Arthur Ownby. And they are all basically victims of the oncoming civilization. Some have found success, Marion Silder being a whiskey bootlegger. He has a nice car, he has money. Others have experienced more loss or problems, and all are dealing with the Wheel of Fortune. And if we look at orat, if we just want to continue on, O-R-A-T in Latin means to plead. And one of the things that you do when you're on the bottom of the Wheel of Fortune is obviously pleading. And of course, if we look at T-O-R-A, what does that spell? That spells Torah, which is the law. And this is the laws of the universe. And in The Orchard Keeper, McCarthy actually is somewhat very biblical and theological. Here, I got my kitten right here talking about the bottom side of the Wheel of Fortune. McCarthy is showing how the new laws that his father was promoting with the Tennessee Valley Authority were starting to have a negative influence on society. Then obviously this one doesn't really relate to the Orchard Keeper, but A-T-O-R also can translate to Hathor because in a lot of languages the H is silent or doesn't even exist, and that's the Egyptian deity or goddess of love. And obviously love is a part of the Wheel of Life and Fortune. And so what tarot is actually cultivating, this will blow your guys' mind, is the Wheel of Tarot cultivates, it pleads the law of Hathor. The Wheel of Tarot, the wheel that we see right here is trying to cultivate what? Is trying to cultivate the law of love, because love is the only law. Love under will, do what thou wilt. That's what Aleister Crowley said a long time ago, which basically was the evolution of anarchism, saying that if we all have love, we don't need any government. If we have opened our heart chakra and have the ability to love, then violence really couldn't exist. Suffering and whatnot would exist, but unnecessary violence against sentient beings wouldn't be a problem anymore. And another way to phrase it is that the Wheel of Tarot brings order by asking us to learn and contemplate natural law, which is basically the golden rule. Do unto others as you would done unto yourself. Don't violate other people unless you are doing it out of self-defense. I mean, basically that's what natural law is. And that's what we are being asked to contemplate here. And that's what the Orchard Keeper is being asked to contemplate, because it's the first implementation of government incursion really in Appalachia. There were all these people in the Appalachian Mountains who were living on land which they had cultivated for over 100 years, but they didn't have the deeds or didn't have the right documentation. And Cormac McCarthy's father came in and threw them off the land. And people who did own their properties for that long, he threw them off their lands because they needed to build a dam or a national park. And all that is screwed up, because now we see that national parks and the whole National Park Service is just another tool to create, it's a money tool, but it doesn't worry about conservation. If they cared about conservation, they would lock up the park and only allow people to walk in and use, and hire a couple rangers to make sure people weren't like going too crazy in there. That's the Edward Abbey idea of conservation. And I totally believe that. If you go to Yellowstone and you see thousands of people and people messing with buffalo and all the, fat people walking around using their phones, is that conservation? That's not how I think conservation should be. How are the animals reacting to all that? Not very well. And if we look in here also, these symbols that you see next to the R's, that basically is the Hebrewic words for Yahweh. So it's also a symbol of Yahweh. And so when we look at these four individuals up here, Boom, Boom, and Boom, they actually resembled four gospel speakers: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but they're also the archangels, obviously. Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael, if I'm getting that correct. But they're also supposed to symbolize, because look, why is this a wheel? Why is it the Wheel of Fortune? Because astrology is also connected here, because at the astrological wheel, that's what this is also representing. And we can see that because what's actually being represented in this depiction are the four different elemental signs of the zodiac. And the man appears representing Aquarius, and this is the fixed air sign. So in astrology, there's this idea of fixed signs, and a fixed sign is something that is not that mutable. It's not very, you could call it somewhat stubborn. It is what it is. And the reason that they are here in the deck is because these four different beings represent the four different minor arcana decks of the tarot, which are earth, water, air, and fire. And they are fixed because they are elementally being raised into reality through art and through archetypes. Something that's mutable or cardinal doesn't have a place in reality. So we have Aquarius up here. Down here we have Leo, the fixed fire sign. Down here we have Taurus, the bull, the fixed sign. And up top we have the eagle, which represents water, which is the emotion. So knowledge, emotions, wealth, and stability, and then action with fire. And I've always said that in The Orchard Keeper is everything you need to know about Cormac McCarthy. It's the strongest novel in terms of of philosophical value, in the sense that all the main themes that we talk about are present in that novel. They're really not present in every other novel. And so that's why I'm really picking it as the most all-encompassing card. And up top is the guardian of knowledge, which is the Sphinx, right? That's always been, sorry, my kitten's going crazy, has always been a symbol for that. But then at the bottom, so if we want to ascend with our free will choice to the higher realms of knowledge, we can, or we can go down with the trickster and the serpent. And so this is also, also very biblical, but also very spiritual at the same time. And there are trickster elements in The Orchard Keeper, if we want to talk about it right now. Kenneth Ratner is John Wesley Ratner's father, and at the start of the novel, he's representing archetypal evil. He is pure evil, a very early version of Judge Holden. And he is a trickster. He tries and tricks the main protagonist of the novel, Marion Sylder, by killing him. There's a flat tire in the car, and when Marion is fixing it, Ratner comes up behind him with the jack and hits him in the back of it, and they get in a tussle, and Marion ends up killing him. However, Marion doesn't make the choice at that time to move into the free will realm of knowledge. He continues to exist in this middle ground, and that's why the problems in the story continue to persist, because none of the characters choose to cultivate the law of love, and they are experiencing their sins for their past actions. Marion killed a man, and he's experiencing a lot of trauma from that. John Wesley Ratner is experiencing the sins of his father, who just got killed. And Arthur Ownby is experiencing trauma from desecrating nature by being a railroad man, and also killing mountain lion cubs during that process, and a couple other things. But he views all of that as a traumatic experience that is ruining his life, that threw him to the bottom side of the wheel of fortune. And you could say it did, that these actions that don't equate to love and that are harming sentient beings for no reason. I understand to live and to do things, we need to do that. But him unnecessarily killing mountain lions isn't that. And so I could go on all day, you guys. Like, we're about to, Jesus, I still have 11 cards left. Every single card I can break down at this level. But I'm hoping you guys now see the potential that just in this little thing that you see right here can give you to take into your own life. At some level, if every single human on earth understood this card, like understood it and people taught them, or the principles outside of the card, everything in the world would be fine. And so the next random book that got selected is Blood Meridian, McCarthy's 5th novel. And this one is hard to select because obviously there are like a lot of dark elements to it. And, like giving it the devil or death is a very easy choice, but a lot of McCarthy's novels deal with death and the devil. And so I have to pick the devil here because it's not just about like Lucifer. And obviously we're seeing like a depiction of Lucifer here, but that's not really what the messaging is. Because when you reject truth, what do you get? And truth being that, like natural law, that don't harm others. Like there's an objective morality to this world at some level that we need to hold to. And we shouldn't be harming others. And when you reject that, the only thing that you get is slavery. And this is just very apparent in the sense that the more, like if you just look at like countries and historical things, the more emphasis on objective morality and people actually holding that standard in a society, the more free it was. And because when you reject that and you move into moral relativism, you think that you're destroying hierarchy, but you're actually creating a new hierarchy. And this is obviously depicted in like Star Wars very well, because Darth Vader, like the stormtroopers are slaves to like Darth Vader and to the commanders, and Darth Vader is being commanded by the Emperor, but the Emperor is the biggest slave of them all, because the Emperor is a slave to the dark side. He is just a conduit being 100% controlled by the dark side. He is the biggest slave of all. And so when you reject this idea, like we see in Blood Meridian, you think it gives you freedom, but what are these guys actually doing? They're becoming slaves to their barbaric impulses. They've been reduced to putting matter at the top of the hierarchy. And so that's what we see with the reverse pentagram. I don't know if you guys know this, but the reverse pentagram, what this actually means is that there are the 4 elements like earth, water, air, and fire. And those are the 4 points of the star. And the top point of the star is like ether. And that's love. That is the everything. And the 4 other points represent thought, emotion, action, and like material wealth in the world. But when the pentagram is down, it says that love and all that is at the bottom. That's what matters least. And the material world is what matters most, and success in that by any means necessary. And so in Blood Meridian, the men reject that idea, but they're also failing at achieving higher level consciousness. And that's why the devil is 15, because 15 divided by 2 is 6.5, and 6 in numerology is the failure of higher consciousness, the ability not to be able to do that. And if you look at other tarot cards that in the minor arcana that are 6s, that's what they're usually depicting. And obviously, this is Adam and Eve down here, and they've been taken captive by the adversarial energy. And you could say that the kid and the rest of the gang has been taken hostage by the judge's, massive energy, and he's like pushing them toward this. And also the energy of the government and the whole time period, including the Comanches, and all the whole mindset is one of lower consciousness. If you guys want to see how just as a quick exercise, to see how it all connects, at the start, on the earthly plane, we have to make a judgment. And if you choose the internal path, the path of severity, and this is the Jewish Kabbalah being depicted here through the tarot. Once again, it's all connected, and all these little points here connect to astrology. It never ends. If you take the journey to the moon, which is the internal, eventually it leads to the devil. It leads to slavery and eventually death. But at the end, all paths lead to the same place. But this is the hardest path to take, everybody. Taking this path, and this is what a lot of people are doing in our society now, obviously. They are enslaving themselves and choosing their own narcissism and internal experiencing and rejecting objective morality. Because also, obviously, we exist in an objective and subjective world, but we're not going to be able to achieve anything if we don't have objective standards. And objective standards make sense in reality because creation is the law of everything. And the rejection of creation through destruction doesn't align with the values literally of the universe. Even though we're existing in entropy all the time, as human beings, we have the free will choice to create or destroy, and we were made in creation. I'm not Christian ever. I'm not like sitting here preaching, but these are principles that nihilists and atheists never can wrap their heads around because they're just too logicked out. So the next books we're going to be talking about that got randomly selected, we'll do The Passenger and Stella Maris. And obviously, I think that the Lovers is the best for The Passenger, the best card. And so once again, we see Adam and Eve here. However, they are being greeted not by God, but seemingly the goddess. And the goddess energy really rules love. It's more of a feminine energy, even though the feminine has been outright just ripped out of Christianity, and people try to talk about the Virgin Mary and whatnot, but has very little presence in it. It still is the energy of love. And this card is representing true care, and obviously the bringing together of the masculine and feminine energy within, right? Because we all have that, and being able to unify that is the path to higher consciousness. But understanding the deeper questions of life and truth are a part of this, because with, as we were talking about earlier, love is truth, and that's what Bobby is trying to explore. He is trying to understand himself, but he's also trying to understand the deeper questions about the world. And that's why we're seeing, I think, the FBI or whatever government angle coming in, because through that, we kind of get an understanding about multiple dimensions of reality. Why is the missing passenger not there? Where is Alicia? Are they in a different dimension? And then, for the last 200 something pages of the novel, he's on an internal journey trying to understand and recuperate his relationship with love. And at the end of the novel, we get that when he really is kind of hallucinating, but moves into like love consciousness. And for Stella Maris, I really feel a call to judgment because we're doing a review of Alicia's life. I mean, that's what it basically is. She's reviewing the good and the bad of her life and talking about her theories and really making judgments on reality on people, like discerning. She's a very discerning novel, and she's contemplating her incest and whatnot. And judgment is what really aligns most with the tarot, because she's too conflicted to really put her in other categories. She is very optimistic, but she's also very internal. Like she's a very, at some level, complicated character, but it's a novel about psychoanalysis. I mean, not really, but that's what's happening, and one of judgment. And so for the road, I really feel like the Tower card represents this most. And the Tower card in tarot represents destruction. And destruction is an archetype of everything. We have to destroy, right? There is creation and there is destruction. And all throughout history, all civilizations fall. And this is obviously a major depiction of destruction, because even though we have this sense of hope and carry the fire, eventually the father dies and we don't know what's going to happen to the kid. He's probably going to die too. We're basically hanging out with straggling survivors of a world that's been destroyed and maybe will never be renewed, especially if all the animals and everything is gone. Eventually, all the canned food and everything probably is going to lead to an obliteration of the human race. And as we see here, the crown illumination is what a lightning bolt is hitting, and what is causing the fire, making everyone jump, is because natural law has been lost. And when that has been lost, the universe moves into chaos, because we don't know if this was, I think it was like a volcano, but it also could be a nuclear holocaust. There are theories for both. But at a deeper level, we're so divided and not under natural law that if a meteor comes and hits Earth, or if a cataclysmic event happens at this point, it'll be our fault if we don't survive, because 99.9% of humans aren't doing anything with their life. And we have no unity in terms of goals and what we're trying to do. But if we were all under natural law, we'd be doing as much as we can to not just like end suffering, but to preserve the human species, because that's the next level. When we come together, the next thing we're going to be doing is obviously advancing science and technology and moving into those realms, which will help us exist on other planets, and also be able to maybe understand if there's going to be a massive earthquake, or be able to stop a meteor if it's coming. These are all things with enough technology and knowledge that we'll be able to deal with. But instead, we're watching TikTok videos. How much energy? Imagine if everyone just in a state, everyone in the state of Arizona for 3 years focused on curing cancer. And if you're a dumbass, you don't know anything, maybe you're washing the clothes or doing, because that's what happens anyway. There are the people who are smart and they're doing things, and there's the people at the bottom. But no one's actually making an effort. Everyone clocks in and they don't really care about the job. But what if everyone had a unitary focus and they were like really into it? They're like, I'm not just going to wash clothes. I'm going to do a great job. I'm going to do it for 12 hours a day. And then when I'm done, I'm going to go do a couple other things. And so that everyone was uplifted toward one goal. How fast would we figure out, curing cancer? Can't give you an exact date, but it will be thousands of times faster than we're going to do it on the trajectory we're on. And that's why I'm here with this channel right now. I believe that Like, look, the only way to get people to understand this stuff is through education. And I know that most people out there don't give a shit about reading and education, but they would if there were incentives to doing it. There is the greatest incentive of all, especially for men, which is the sexual incentive. Men will do anything for women. Look at sim culture. But our celebrities are telling us to do degenerate and random stuff. And they're not telling. Imagine if all the celebrities in the world were telling us and influencing and manipulating us with the algorithms to read more books and to think and to contemplate the law of love. Like, oh my God, we don't even have one doing that. That's how you know most things in reality are a psyop and things are really bad, because not one person who is like big is talking about these things and trying to make that happen, because it would tear down the whole power structure and they would go along with it. They are still trying to benefit from this archaic hierarchical system. And if they start advocating for that, obviously they might get in trouble or canceled or whatnot. But imagine saying love is the law, love is the only law, and getting canceled. But that does mean you're going to get canceled, because that means you're not advocating for the violence that we have to experience every single day as subjects of a non-voluntary system. Next on the map is Sutri, and this is going to be a interesting pick, but this one for sure, I think this novel really shows that Sutri represents death. I mean, because Sutri is an ode to alcoholism and like a lot of the problems that, men like that experience, but he also almost dies at the end of the novel. But if you guys remember that chart that we just saw, like with the Kabbalah, it goes the devil, then death, and then liberation. You can still achieve liberation through death. And that's why we're seeing on this card right now, motion, transformation, and like a baptism going on, because that's what death represents at like a very metaphorical level. Obviously, there's like death, but that's not what this card is representing. It's representing the death of something within. And that's what Sutri is moving toward by the end of the novel. He is finally leaving Knoxville and killing the death. That's, obviously allegorical to McCarthy leaving the East permanently and moving on to this different life, leaving his second wife and his family behind and charting his own path. And the whole Border trilogy, to me, represents the moon, because right here we see, I would say, John Grady and Billy Parham barking at this moon, but it's a false moon and they are being deceived. You can see the crab coming behind them, or this lobster thing. So this card is about really interiority and deception, and that's what is happening in those novels. Both John Grady and Billy Parham are searching for this world that doesn't exist anymore. They think by going down to Mexico that, isn't as progressive and doesn't have an atom bomb and all this stuff, that they're going to find this freedom, but all they find is just more chaos. Mexico has evolved in its own way. It's not like the Old West anymore. It has gone through multiple socialist revolutions and colonialism and all the stuff we saw in Blood Meridian. And the people are very hardened and don't give a rat's ass about, your search for liberation and freedom. So most of the novel is them being too romantic, at least the first two novels. And then the third novel, they're trying to come to terms with that romance. And not really trying to come to terms. It's just showing what you become after you've been deceived for a long time and you lose that hope in your heart. Child of God for sure represents the hermit. Lesser Ballad, it's basically a novel about this seemingly mentally ill necrophiliac and his experiences. And he's just a hermit, and that's what's kind of driving this experience, that he doesn't have the connection that he wants, so he's trying to find it through dead bodies. And last but not least, we have Outer Dark, and I think this is for sure The Fool. This is kind of the 0 point for McCarthy, where he really branches off into a lot of his works. And you can see that The Fool's going on a journey, and Rinty and Kola go out with this, especially Rinty, with this sort of optimism. And, they're being followed, by a bunch of people in this depiction. It's a dog, but they're basically fools going out on this journey. They don't understand what the world really is. There's this triune trilogy that eats their baby at the end. And the entire time, no one gives up and is like, all right, let's maybe not sleep with my sister. Maybe I should go get a job somewhere. They're basically a bunch of rambling. They're a ship of fools. So what did you guys think of the breakdown? I'm going to do this, but with McCarthy's characters using the minor arcana. That will probably be hours long, because I'll probably be doing 30 or 40 characters and trying to figure out what they represent. And boom, more eccentric McCarthy content will be coming soon. Peace.